BFM 89.9, good morning, I'm Nadia Hassan and this is BFM's Morning Headlines. I'm standing in for Sharad Kutan while he goes and looks at environmental issues in Pulau Indah. This time that's actually what he's doing. But I do have a question for the wonderful man who actually does all these videos, Mr. David Buri, who's actually sitting behind at the moment. David, has it been cold to you?
Yes, very nipply.
Okay, so that's what he actually says. And the thing is, for some people, they just disagree. What do you mean it's cold? And yet it dominates the headlines of all the major papers. NST, Berita Harian, The Star and some of the others all actually have it's feeling chilly. And I like how Star actually puts a picture of a snow-capped bus in the background to give you that impression, although this is nowhere anywhere near Malaysia. But basically the story is that Malaysia has been feeling what they call a cold snap. And according to them, it's because of the cold northeasterly winds coming from China. You have seen some drop in degrees. So Subang has dropped over the month from 24 to 22. KK has dropped from 23 to 22. Cold, but not yet ready to break out the Arctic here, so I do not see what's the justification of it making almost every single major headline and you have people wrapped in blankets. Is it just because they're not used to what they call the cold? But for us who've actually gone to slightly more overseas countries and felt the cold, I can tell you pretty much this is not cold. But the thing that I was thinking about was because usually near Chinese New Year, it's hot as anything, it's sticky, nobody ever wants to do anything, so maybe this is cold in comparison to the previous years. Now, the interesting thing about the Star, and I will bring this up, is that in the paper, if you know how a paper is laid out, page 3 is the most off-read page after the front cover, not even page 2. And here is an interesting story that kind of piqued my interest. MP hopes to save marriage. This is in regard to Lembah Pantai MP Nurul Izzah and the fact that, according to the story, she is expected to withdraw her fasakh, which is annulment of marriage by Sharia law, and is trying to save her marriage of 10 years to her husband. Okay, fine. First of all, my issue with this is that it's a bit tabloidy, never mind. We all seem to get into lives of politicians, but it's tabloidy maybe for the Star. But here's the line in it that got to me. The article actually asks the question as to whether this will impact her securing a higher position in her party. Now, okay, hold on. I have a really big problem with that. It's true. Politicians and their private lives do tend to bleed into one another. You know, sometimes you can't avoid it, and it's not enough to say that their private life, you know, public life. But in the case of somebody like Andrew Weiner, who went and showed, you know, his privates to everybody and all on Twitter or Craigslist or whatever, then that was clearly a crime. So yes, that would affect his political career. But in her case, if she gets a divorce, what? So what? You know, so what? You know, it will not affect her as a politician, and to imply that is like, so what does a divorce have to do with how well she runs her constitution? You know, it just boggles the mind that somebody would still kind of draw those kind of comparisons. The other big problem I have with Star today is, I'm not even going to show you this picture because I refuse to. It's about dead kittens. They put dead kittens, friends, on page 3. You know, come on. You open the paper and the first thing you see is dead kittens, seriously. It's about to do with a fire that happened in an apartment building and the kittens actually apparently leaped off the building in effort to save themselves. So I find it in poor taste that you show dead kittens on page 3. However, reading Harian Metro later, apparently it was the cats that caused the fire, so I don't know how much sympathy you have, but still, dead kittens, not a good thing. And funnily enough, for the more serious news, I had to go to Malay Mail. And Malay Mail has this really fascinating story, given my business background, about 8,000 investors that claim were duped by this Kiwi IT firm. So there was this New Zealand public listed company that allegedly cheated over 8,000 investors of 70 million ringgit in this investment scheme. And when I was reading the details, I thought that some of the details should have already given you red flags. First of all, the directors had convinced the investors that they were going to set up a public listed company in China that promised returns of 40 to 50%. That should have already rung the first alarm bell. 40 to 50%, you know, there's no such thing, I'm sorry to say. If it's too good to be true, it probably is. Now, here's the other kicker. They also said that if the venture failed, they would pay back the investment 110%. So your money back plus a little extra for the inconvenience you had. And apparently they had people who reassured the investors that this had happened before, previous firms had failed, and the people had gotten back their money plus extra. For me personally, big red flag, no such thing. You know, how do you expect them to pay back when the thing has already failed? So that's a very big stuff. And then in terms of the front page, this is an ignorant shocker. Dengue is like chickenpox. Okay. Some people apparently say that because this is related to a spike of cases that was in a Selangor housing estate, and people weren't even aware there was a spike of cases. And there was one man who was quoted in the paper as saying, "Isn't dengue a bit like chickenpox? You must get it at least once in your life." No. Google it. It's probably a little bit better. And then a couple of wrapping things up. Finally is Your Call. That's the front of the Sun. This is quoting KJ, Khairi Jamaluddin, who said that the cabinet remains committed to its 10-point solution but wants the Selangor government to resolve the controversy of the Bibles in Bahasa Malaysia. And the funny thing is, this little thing, the 10-point solution cannot supersede state enactments, and this was a state deal. It's just going to keep brewing as far as I can tell. And finally, from my favorite paper ever, you have Harian Metro, and I just love the headlines from this. This one, funnily enough, shared a copy with Sina as well. And it's all about kena belasa. So it's about scratch and win. They call it gores. That's the word of the day, gores. Tak menang. And it was about a scheme where essentially people thought they were winning a scratch and win, and they wanted to win Toyota Camrys and everything, but in the end they end up winning a mattress. Again, relating back to the investment issue, if it's too good to be true, it probably is. And the one little note before we go off, I like this one. Tawa 433 juta to marry off my lesbian daughter. This is in relation to a Chinese businessman who's offering quite a big chunk of change if any of you eligible bachelors out there can convert his lesbian daughter. And when asked what she thought about it, she goes, "Well, this is a sign that my dad loves me." Ah well, to each their own. That's all I have today. I am Nadia Hassan for BFM 89.9, and this was Morning Headlines.